Welcome to the No Name Brand Podcast. My name is Sashka Hanarappel, actress, singer, dancer, turned brand marketing, sales, and advertising strategist who brands your soul. And each week I bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover your undergod, turn up your leadership notches, challenge the status quo, because you're fast and furious with a powerful message to share with the world. Thank you for taking time out with me today, and without further ado, let's get our creative and wisdom juices flowing. An information junkie, ridiculously good goal setter, strategist, and action taker. When she's not wobbling home after an extended happy hour, solving problems is kind of her thing. She's fascinated by the creative process and creativity, and believes that by uncovering your own creativity, you unleash really special things that make life and the world a better place. Things like vulnerability, self-expression, enthusiasm, and awareness. Our next guest is a rad millennial, podcaster, and copywriter with a vision and mission to just owning your grown-up you. Here she is, ladies and gentlemen, RIKKI Ayers. Hello, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, cool. It's a pleasure. Where are you in the world today?
I live in Victoria, BC, Canada, and it is ugly outside, so I'm happy to be just inside getting stuff done.
It's beautiful by us, and I'm sitting in my costume, my bathing costume. It's beautiful.
Oh, I'm jealous. Yeah, it's far too cold for that here.
So we're going to dive right in, and I've got a few questions for you because I'd love to know your message and love to know more about you. What do you love about being a millennial? What are the major challenges for you?
I think being a millennial is so interesting, especially because I'm 31 now, so I'm kind of just on the cusp of not being a millennial, but I grew up before the internet was like a big thing. So it was really interesting to kind of see it get bigger and bigger. And I think now the next generation, they've never had that. The internet has always been there. And for millennials, it's changed everything. It's changed our access to information. It's changed the way we can go to school, the way we can build a business. It's changed so many things. I think that's the biggest thing that excites me. I love seeing where that's going to go. And I love kind of just keeping an eye on technological change and what's going on out there and how fast it's moving.
Yeah, it does move very, very fast. Do you think millennials get taken seriously, in inverted commas, in today's world? Or do you feel you're taken up more on being a grown-up or, more of a kid side? Is it, how do you think millennials get taken?
It's interesting. I read a lot of articles about the perception of millennials, and I always like to see who the author is because there's kind of two different sides of communication. There's one that, called millennials, they want everything for nothing. They don't want to work hard. They want to, be a manager right off the bat. This is in terms of like work stuff. They expect to not have to save a lot of money, but to get everything that they want. They always want the latest gadgets, blah, 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 blah. But that's not my experience with millennials. And I'm sure that's true for some people, but my experience with millennials is a lot of us are just trying to make it in a world that's totally, we have no frame of reference for living. We can't live the way that our parents did. We don't have the same access to resources. Work has changed. Obviously, like I said, the technology's changed, and everything has gone up in price except for wages. Wages have not really increased a lot in a long time. So we're dealing with a whole new set of things. And I think just trying to come to terms with that without a lot of available guidance, just because everyone is, trying to deal with this at the same time, is really interesting to me. And kind of, that's how I see millennials in my own way.
I love that. I love how millennials just, I don't want to say easygoing. That's probably just a lack of words at the moment, but they're so observant and really just living in the moment and not in the future. Mm-hmm. That's what I most learned from myself, where it's just like, oh, hang on, just take it for now. Because so often when I've worked with millennials, they're doing stuff when I'm going, yeah, but you don't know the consequences. And they're like, yeah, and I'm like, actually, yeah. Okay. So it's like, all right. So someone that I know who does videography, and I just love his outtake on everything because he's just like, live in the moment, do vlogging, just express how you're feeling right now. And I was like, yeah, but what about, the deep stuff? And he's like, yeah, it'll come later. just speak now, like where you are now. I'm like, oh yeah, that's so true. That's my take with a millennial. So I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting. And I think social media maybe has quite a bit to do with that because now everyone's a publisher. And so maybe publishing your ideas, your creative work, your content or whatever becomes a little bit less scary kind of because everyone's doing it in some form or another.
That's so true. You've personally done a turnaround in your business and you're a bit more concentrated on copywriting and podcasting. Why did you choose these two niches? I mean, where did you find the confidence and a surety to know this is my niche?
Well, it wasn't easy, I'll tell you that. I started a digital marketing business because that's what I'd done in my corporate and nonprofit work before. And I was very much a generalist. I kind of knew how to do a little bit of everything. And so I was doing that for a couple of clients and I was just going crazy because I was doing tons of really small tasks. So I was constantly bouncing back from one thing or the other. Everything was really last minute. And it just didn't work with my working style. I really like to do deep dives. I really like to spend a lot of time on projects and things like that. And I've always loved writing. I was just never confident enough to call myself a copywriter. And so I took a copywriting course just to kind of beef up on the latest in how to do website copywriting specifically. And then it really just took some looking back at my past and, what had been kind of the constant thing throughout the last, 10 years. And that was absolutely writing. I've written since I was a kid. I used to write, this is so nerdy, I used to write these fake magazines and put pictures of like my sister with like headlines and stuff on the cover. And I used to write these little workbooks for my little sister and stuff like that so she could practice schoolwork. Like, I was such a little geek. But it was so funny. So, and I realized that finally, like, this is what I love to do. Like, I love to write. I love words. I love reading. I love editing. I love all of that. So I decided just to stick with that. And then the podcasting kind of built off of that because I find podcasting is a really interesting way. And it's also very similar to what I do in some of my client interviews, like pulling out really important pieces of people's stories. And it's just a different way to present that. And I really like that I love listening to podcasts because you can kind of hear people speak. It's a little bit less edited than, say, a blog post or something like that. And I really get a better feeling of the emotions and all of that stuff behind the story. So they go perfectly together. It wasn't an easy shift. I really had to do some hard work. I went through a coaching program and all that. And finally I'm at a place where I love everything that I do. And I never knew if I would actually get there. So it's pretty great.
I think that's so cool. And I'll belong to your nerdy club because you reminded me when I was a kid, I wasn't doing books. I was doing magazines. I was creating magazines. So I cut out pictures from other magazines and create my own and how I saw it and doing like little drawings and artwork and writing and everything as well. So we'll just be the nerdy club of writing and magazines. I like that. What's it like being a copywriter in today's world? I mean, you were saying before, like, anyone can publish and it's just like, not a problem. I can just do anything. So what's it like being a copywriter?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting getting started because I started offering, fairly low rates just to kind of get my feet wet in copywriting. I've done lots of writing and copywriting in kind of corporate settings, but never really on my own getting clients and that kind of thing. So the hardest thing, I think, at first, especially, it's saturated. There are a ton of copywriters out there, and there are a lot of really good copywriters out there. And so you really have to hone in on who you really want to work with and then find out kind of what your specialty is in helping them. I think that's been the biggest learning piece for me in just trying to figure out exactly what kind of people I want to work with and then how to tell their story and find any kind of similarities or themes or anything like that that can help me specialize in a certain area.
How do you put yourself in your client's shoes? How do you write for them? I mean, you were saying, you ask the client questions. And I know for myself, when I work with copywriters, it's for a magazine or journalism, it's different. But when they're writing for a website copy, it's really personal. And even sales pages, like without being too salesy and really getting the essence and the soul of not only the business, but the brand, and the brand is the person. How do you step into their shoes? Or how would you go into your zone of genius? Or do you like put candles on and like,
Not quite, but I love this question. Actually, I've never been asked this question before. So I always have to speak with my client. I can't just, receive an email reply and write website copy. I have to understand how they talk. And you kind of get a feel, it's almost like speech writing, I guess. You kind of get a feel for how they speak, what kind of emotions they put behind things. And also you can tell when you've kind of hit on some important notes, because people will start talking really fast, or they'll get really excited about something, and they'll start telling stories about their background or something like that. So I've got like a list of questions that I kind of go through with each client on a call, and that's kind of how I pull out some of the things. And then I also do a lot of research. So I'll go through a lot of their previously written content or podcasts or videos, just to get a really good idea of who they are as a person. And that's the most important piece. So you kind of get there, and then you kind of just not become them, but it's like writing a story and building a character. You kind of build a character for them in your mind, and you write as if you were them. So you kind of put yourself, like you said, in their shoes and pretend you're them for just a few moments, and you say, how would this person say this? And you just write like that. And sometimes it takes a couple of edits, but often I find if the person is quite open and talking about, why they wanted to do something, why they have such a big idea, or why they started this business or whatever, usually get a pretty good idea of what they want to say.
I love that. Because that's so important. Again, taking on an acting role and putting yourself in their shoes. And I love that you pick up on the body language and the voice language. That's really cool. So when you're writing, it's almost mimicking their behaviors. It's really cool.
Yeah, I never thought about it as it's acting, I guess, but in a different way.
Yeah, it's not you're not on stage in front of people, but rather you're on your own stage, just you and your pen or your typewriter. Yeah. It's you and me, babe. We're going to write. Do you feel that anyone can write, or copywriters the only ones anointed to do so?
Well, I know a lot of people who are good writers that aren't copywriters. I don't think everyone is good at writing. It does take some time and practice just to kind of, with copywriting specifically, it's really about writing succinctly. So really punchy, short sentences. And a lot of people, especially if you come from an academic background, aren't really good at that, because you're so used to writing in big words and big sentences and long paragraphs, and that just does not work for the web. So it takes practice. I've gone through courses. I've done a lot of, I don't even know how many pages of web copy I've written by now, but I know at least a few hundred by now. And you just kind of, it takes a special keenness for this kind of writing, but also some skills.
What kind of skills do you need? What should we look for in a copywriter?
I would definitely look for how they write their own stuff. And so if you're reading their blog, how does their personality come across in their blog? How do they write? If that kind of resonates with you, the kind of messages that they say, they're probably a good person to work with you. There are some copywriters that specialize in business copy, some that specialize in, working with creatives and authors or artists. There's some that specialize in more technical stuff. So it's really kind of figuring out what kind of person you need for your own business or work. And I think also you want to work with someone who asks a lot of questions off the bat and doesn't come back to you again and again with stuff. Someone who kind of has an idea of how the process works before you get started.
There's lots of things to think about the skill. What do you love most about writing? What inspires you?
Oh gosh, I love so many things about writing. I love words. I'm one of those, like I said before, I get really nerdy about reading and writing, and I'll read a book and I'll read a sentence like 3 times just because I think it's a beautiful sentence, and I love just picking out different meanings and things like that. I think I also love writing. I've never been a good public speaker. I've always found it harder for me to express myself in a verbal language than written language. For some reason, when I write, everything comes out so much easier, and it sounds and looks better than it does, I think, if it comes out of my mouth.
Is there something you would love to write that you haven't had set the intention to write yet? Is there like a big project that you got your eye on or your heart set on, where you kind of like, I'm working towards that one?
Yes. So my next big project actually is developing a compilation of short stories. kind of based on some of the stuff that I've learned from doing my own podcast and the stuff that I've learned from my podcast guests. So kind of preparing myself to write like short fictional, what I'm calling inspirational stories. It's something new for me. I've never done fiction before. I've always written more business writing, that kind of stuff. So it's a totally new thing for me, and I'll get started on something and then I'll have that perfectionist problem and I'll go and edit. So it's taking me a while to get started, but it's something that I've got my sights set on to at least publish a compilation, so maybe 10 or something like that by the end of the year.
Oh, that's a pretty ambitious.
We'll see. Yeah.
Not bad. Cool, man. Tell me, why do you do what you do? What is your why?
Mm-hmm. So I think my why it's a few things, but I think at the basis, I love to help people get their story out of their head. So, everyone's got a story to tell. Everyone can inspire someone in some way based on either experiences that they've had in their life or ideas that they have, a perspective that they have that's unique. And so I love just working with people and just having people around me, like friends and family, who need a little help with getting that out and being brave with that. I love helping people with that. So I love to do, like for the podcast, I love to just ask people hard questions and see what they say. And then afterwards we'll talk about it and they'll be like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I said that. And to me, I'm like, no, that was so good. That was so real. That's going to inspire somebody. So I like to help people be brave and confident with what they want to say to other people. I think that's a really big part of my why, because I think we need more of that. I think especially with so much technology and social media, we're so used to seeing very edited versions of other people's lives that it's nice to hear someone say directly to you exactly what they're thinking and exactly what they stand for.
Speaking of that, the technology, how do you stand, or what is your viewpoint, or how do you feel between writing on a keyboard and writing with your hands?
Oh, it's so different.
Expand on this a little bit. Like, what the major differences there?
So for me, it's easier to write with my hands. If I'm doing, for example, I was working on a really difficult blog post for this agency that I work with last week, and it was really technical. I was having trouble kind of putting it together and also just kind of figuring out how all these different pieces work together. And so I was just sitting at my keyboard and I was taking notes and I was just kind of writing stuff, but it wasn't flowing at all. So I grabbed my notebook and I just started writing by hand and drawing pictures, and all of a sudden it started to make sense. So there's something about writing by hand where it just comes out easier than if you're on a screen. And also writing by hand, it's a little bit more like free writing, where you can cross things off, but it's always there. So you can't edit. So you just have to write, and it can be messy because no one's going to see it. And so I do prefer like the journaling and free writing style, especially if I'm trying to really do something that's hard. And then as far as keyboard writing, I love it because it's quick editing and easily shareable and all that stuff. And obviously it's a lot faster. In the future, I'm hoping there's some way that's kind of like talk to type, where you can think or speak something or write something by hand, and then it will go up on your computer in beautiful language instead of having to type all the time. But I haven't seen anything like that yet.
I think it was Moleskine. I think Moleskine's got that.
Oh.
It's a book. And you write as if you were writing with a pen and paper. It's got the same feel and look of it. And once you write it, it's then uploaded into your documents.
Oh my God, I'm going to check that out.
It's pretty cool because you can draw and color in and do things that you'd normally do, but you just got one pen. I think,
cool.
Yeah. I don't know, because I'm such a stationery geek. So I've got so many notebooks everywhere, and I love notebooks and paper. So although... I'm destroying the forest. That's not good. More. Do you have this is a difficult question. I'm always like stumped when I get asked, but do you have a favorite book or a book that changed your perspective on life, writing your book, your why?
Yeah, for sure. There's been a few, but the biggest one I think is probably Stephen Pressfield's Turning Pro. It's such a good book, and it actually came to me at the right time. It was kind of when I was just starting to kind of get really into the copywriting stuff and letting go of the digital marketing and all that extra stuff. And I was kind of trying a few things, but I wasn't really serious about it. And then I was thinking about doing these short stories like I told you about and the podcast, and I hadn't started any of that yet. And I read the book, and immediately, like the next day, I started putting everything to play after. I read the whole book in like a day, and it's so good. It's kind of a kick in the pants. It's such a good book that way. And I recommend anyone, you don't have to be a writer. It's kind of for anyone who wants to do creative or meaningful work. It's really about, if you want to be taken seriously, you have to take yourself seriously first and start to respect yourself and, be confident and just do it, because if you don't do it, you're going to regret it. And so that for me was just it was really powerful. And it's a book that I go back to when I'm kind of doubting myself a little bit, or I'm not really sure where to go next. It helps me get going again.
I love that. I'm going to look into it. Steve Pressfield. I'm going to have a look at that. Turning Pro. We're coming to the end, and I ask all my guests at the end 2 questions, and I'd like you to answer them. How do you want to change the world or challenge the world doing what you do?
Oh, gosh. I've always been someone to challenge the status quo. I've never liked being told what to do, but I think I would like to change the world. I want people to be braver in expressing themselves. I think that's, if there's anything that I can do to help change the world, that's what I would like to see. I would like to see people stop putting on airs and faces and things that aren't real, and just showing up who they are and not worrying so much about what other people think. I think that would be really powerful.
I love that. Be brave and express yourself. I love that word, brave. That's pretty cool. I'd like your take, 3 of my core values, if you could fill in the blank for me. Creativity for you is?
Connecting ideas.
Connecting ideas, that's cool. Wisdom for you is?
Speaking from the heart with experience.
Oh, yeah. Passion for you is?
When you get really excited and you jump out of bed because it's the thing that you were meant to do.
Cool. Rikki, I want to thank you so much for being with us here today and being brave yourself and expressing what you love and who you are and your passion and wisdom and creativity and joining the dots. You'll find more about Rikki in the show notes, her favorite book, her favorite quote, social media handles, website, and how to get in contact with her. And I'd like to thank you very much for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
Oh, cool. I'll speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Dang, that was just supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I enjoyed having you on board, and please do me and you a favor. Head on over to iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. Click subscribe, and a super bonus, leave your review and you stand a chance of being announced and advertised on the show. I'm always striving to ensure that your brand is uplifted and empowered. Remember, done is better than perfect. So be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and send in your feedback too. You're the absolute best. Keep rocking.